Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Blue Lifestyle. My name is Kane, and it is my joy to share another conversation with you on this channel. It is my hope that in sharing my experiences and thoughts that you will be motivated and you will be encouraged in your faith. I'm a Christian, and so the things I share on this channel are faith-based. All right, so I want to talk to us today about um, the trusting God's will. Trusting God's will. I know that for a lot of, and this applies to you because you're a Christian and you're a child of God. And so, as a Christian and as a child of God, when you submit your life to God and you submit the leadership of your life to God, and you are operating in a space where whenever it is that you're going to make decisions, that you pray, you fast, you seek God's will, and you allow God the space to be God in your life and to do what is best for you, then if you are that person, this video is for you. Alright, so I want to share this on the backdrop of a few things that are happening around me. And so, I was encouraging another Christian that, you have to trust God's will. You have to trust God's will. And so I want to share from my personal experience about trusting God's will, even when the answer is no. Trusting God's will because God always works it out. All right. So in 2009, I was on contract. No, early 2008, I was on contract. I applied for a full-time position. I did not get the position, and I was offered the part-time position for the person who was promoted. I took the position, right? The following year, a full-time position came up in another location, and I applied for that position. And I remember praying about it because at that time in my life, I was in a place where I needed everything I think I need. Right? I wanted the extra money. But looking back at it, I wanted the extra money. But while I was in the position, I thought I needed the extra money, right? So I applied for the position. I did not get the position. All right. Sometimes when it is that we don't get what we pray for, we are tempted to think that God is not favoring us. We are tempted to think that, what have I done? That God is saying no. But I want to challenge that thinking first today. You didn't do anything. God's no is his sovereign will for you. And so in the school of theology, in scripture and religion, we look at the two kinds of will. There is a sovereign will of God. This is God's absolute perfect will for you. And I want to say to us that is where we want to live our lives, in God's sovereign will. But in addition to the sovereign will, there is a permissive will of God. And this is where God allows it to happen. So you prayed for it, and God says, okay, go ahead. Because you prayed, I'm going to give it to you. No, that is not where we want to live, especially for serious life decisions. That is not where you want to live. So you don't want to make a serious life decision like a marriage, and as a Christian, be married to somebody who is not a Christian, and that is living in the permissive will of God, where because you ask God to bless the relationship or to bless the marriage, He just puts His blessing on it. But it's not God's perfect will for you, because that obviously is in contradiction to the Word of God. But because you have chosen this person and you want to be married to this person, the Lord just says, okay, go ahead. Right? But that is not where you want to live. You want to live in the sovereign will of God. And so you want to live in that will of God, where even if God has to say to you no, and you have to cry and you feel that you were passed over and you were looked over for the promotion or for the so-called blessing or the whatever, that you will trust God's will. You will trust that God knows what He's doing and that He is doing what is best for you. No. So I didn't get that full-time position, and I think if I'm remembering the year correctly, that would have been 2010. All right. 2011, the November of 2010, I made a serious mistake at work, and the mistake was costly. And I remember the day of the disciplinary hearing, the song playing, Mercy said, no, I'm not gonna let you go. I'm not gonna let you slip away. And so that was the day, and I was praying, and I was saying, Lord, please don't let me lose my job. I don't know what happened. I just cannot recount correctly, because it's like I was having mind blankness. I just did not remember some details of the transaction. And it's not something that you don't, especially when you're going for a disciplinary hearing, you don't want to not remember. But honestly, I just did not remember the transaction. I just did not, that day has been very vague for me because of some personal things that I was going through. So I wasn't as attentive, but anyways. And I remember going to the manager's office, and, you're given the form, you should have lost your job, but they're going to put you on this program and all of that, and to correct the behavior and all of that and whatever. And I remember feeling so bad because this was the one error that I made. The one error. But anyways, the job was preserved, and so I was fine. And I remember while being on that program, the Lord gave me favor, I am telling you. All right. So because I'm on that program, they took me out of that unit and placed me somewhere else where I was working by myself for a season. While being in that, working by myself in that season, a particular project, I'm assigned a project, I made more money in that project than if I had gotten the position that I'd applied for. Remember, I told you I applied for full-time and I got a part-time position. I took it. I was making more money working on this project than the full-time person. Fine. All right. I remember one day going to work and the manager just says, you girl, come, get off, come. I went and I sat outside his office. I guess he was trying to figure out what is he going to do with me. I know this may be long, but I want to go into details of it for you to see God's hand at work. Sometimes God's no is His sovereign will, and it will work out in your favor. You just have to, you don't see it like this at the beginning, but you see it at the end. All right. So then, I guess after pondering upon it for a day, he said to me, tomorrow you're going to go and you're going to sit with another team member and you're going to learn that function. All right. So I went. The following year, that function that he sent me to learn, remember, he's trying to get me out of the situation where I almost lost the job because of a mistake. And so he's trying to divert me by the hand of God. Sent me to learn that function. The year after, a position comes up in another location, which is close enough. So I applied for that job and I got that job. This is higher than the full-time position that I didn't get, and this is more money. And this location is closer to where I live, so it's also cheaper. All right. But before we get there, in that same year, I applied for a position at another location for us, the same full-time job. And I remember thinking, I'm applying all over these places because I really want this money because, it would make my life so much easier. All right. I didn't get that job. And I remember thinking, boy, I wonder what is happening with me. But, all along I am praying and I'm fasting. I believe in prayer and fasting. So you will find that as something happens in my life, I go down in fasting and prayer and I said, God, what is this? What is happening? What did I miss? What is happening? And so on. All right. And so I didn't get that job at that location. And I guess I kind of felt like, after applying, so many jobs and so on and not getting them, you kind of get into a mood of thinking, I guess God is not favoring me. And so, whatever. And I guess God probably is punishing me for something or something. I don't even know what, but whatever the thinking is not from a heart of thanksgiving, recognizing that God is faithful. All right. So I remember so I got this position now full time at a location closest to my home, and I'm working in that position. And I take my vacation and I go to a youth camp the following year. And while at the youth camp, I'm going on the road to get gifts for the campers because it's gonna be an award ceremony. So I'm going on the road to get gifts for them. And I'm waiting on taxi, and few taxis pass me, they're empty and they don't stop for me. But this one particular car stops, and I'm in that car going to the place to get the gifts. And interestingly, I would have gone one particular way, but I said, no, that's going to be too far. So let me go another way. So I need a taxi going the other way. And about 2 minutes into the ride, a bulletin comes across the radio that there will be a change in my place of employment. And the branch that is affected was the branch that I'd applied for that I didn't get the job. I had to apologize to God because now with a closure of that branch, they now have to try and place you, that kind of thing. So the Lord prevented me from having that experience. But 3 years ago, I didn't see that. I just saw that God didn't give me the job that I applied for. But here I am 3 years after and realizing that God protected me. I want to say to us that God's protection is not always easy. God's sovereign will is not always the easiest thing. God's sovereign will mean that he has to tell you no, because God, remember, God is everlasting to everlasting, Alpha and Omega, beginning and end. God knows the future from yesterday. Even before the future is even created, God knows what is going to happen. And so when God chooses not to give you a blessing, something that you think is a blessing in this season, it is because he is preventing you. He sees something in the future, and so he is protecting you. But sometimes when God says no, we get into a place of, feeling that, we should have gotten it and it should have been in our favor, and not remembering that, because you see, when it is that you pray and you fast, whatever the outcome is, it is God's will. Hello, somebody. And so I want to put another spin on that, because sometimes people, because they probably don't like you, they have their preference, they don't want to do this, they don't want to do that. And so you're looked over for the blessing. But can I tell somebody that man's disapproval has nothing to do with God? Because when you look at the story of Joseph, his brothers thought that when they sold him into slavery, when they dropped him in the pit, he probably should have died. Then they sold him into slavery. Then they're thinking that the dream that he has, that they're going to bow down to him, will never come to pass. But we do know, and that story is in the Bible, we do know that, hello, somebody, that story is in the book of Exodus or Genesis, in the book of Genesis, that we do know that Joseph actually became prime minister of Egypt, and they actually came and bowed down to him. And so, people may think that they are stopping you, but can I tell you that they're not stopping you, because God allowed it. God allowed it. God allowed it. Hello, somebody. You prayed, you fasted, and God said no. And so, whoever God has to use to instigate the no is fine. So, in this case for Joseph, it was his brothers that the Lord used to provide his no. But that no sent him into Egypt to where he needed to have been prime minister for them to come and bow down. And so I just want to encourage somebody this morning who may be thinking, or today, who may be thinking that, hey, I was looked over for the for the position. I was looked over for the blessing. Sometimes even with loans, you apply for a loan and you don't get the loan. And you're thinking, how am I going to manage? Why didn't they give me the loan? You were looked over for a reason. God allowed it. It's when it is as a Christian. We have to understand that when we say, God, I will trust you, it means I will trust you. It means I will trust you. I may not agree with what you do, but because you are God and I know you love me, I will trust your decisions. And so even as you look at, in relationships, and for a lot of us who have been single a long time, the Lord allows a lot of our relationships not to work out. And you may get to a place of feeling, but God, what is wrong with me? Why is it that, I'm having all these failed relationships and so on? But God, because you keep praying about those relationships and you keep surrendering those relationships to God, when they don't work out, it is God's sovereign will. I will rather live in the sovereign will of God, the absolute will of God, than in His permissive will. And so you have to know that when you pray and you submit whatever it is to God, then it is well, somebody. It is well. It is well, it is well. And so I just want to encourage us. I just want to encourage us as Christian and as children of God. And we know in our hearts that we belong to God. We know in our hearts that we belong to God. We have mistakes and we sin and we make mistakes. But God will not punish you that He will deny you a blessing because of your. No, God is not like that. Right? And so if He allows something to pass you by, though you may want it and He allows you to pass it by, it is because you have surrendered to Him and you have said, God, I want your sovereign will. I want your will for my life. Right? And so a lot of times we pray, Lord, according to your will. So you say, God, this is what I want, but not my will, but your will be done. It means, God, I'm leaving it up to you to make the best decision. So sometimes a lot of things don't work out for us and we're tempted to think that it must be because you have done something wrong. No, you didn't do anything wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. That was your prayer being answered. So God answered you in a no. And can I tell you that I've seen relationships fail and years after saying, oh God, Lord, thank you. Because I would not have been able to deal with a situation like that. Right? And so I just want to encourage us. Yes, it's a lot of times people are standing in your way and they think that, by them diverting it and looking over you, and no, they didn't. They didn't. Joseph said to his brothers when they came and they bowed down to him in Egypt, he said to them, you meant it for evil, but God worked it for good. Romans 8 verse 28 also says to us, we know that all things work together for good to them that love God. It takes somebody to love God to submit their lives to God. Hello, somebody. So if God allows it, it is for your good and for His glory. And so even if it is that it's a no, and even if it is that you feel disappointed, and even if you think that, you should have gotten it, and even if you, because your life is in God's hand, when God says no and you choose to walk in God's no, it cannot work out otherwise than for your good. And so I just want to encourage somebody this morning that listen to me. God is sovereign. I'd rather live in God's sovereign will than live in His permissive will. And, there's a state of permissive will where you cannot afford a vehicle in a particular type of vehicle, an expensive vehicle, right? And so you really want this vehicle, man. And so you go ahead and you buy this vehicle. That is not God's will for you, and it is not God's sovereign will because you cannot afford it. But you really want the vehicle, and so God allows you to buy it. God allows you to buy it, which is His permissive will. So He allows you because it's not going to affect your salvation, and so He allows it, right? It's not going to be to your so much to your detriment, right? But because you prayed for it, He gives it to you, and you don't leave any space for God to say no because you know His position on it, but you decide to go against it anyways, and you go ahead. But it may be a point where you're driving that vehicle. You cannot afford gas for the vehicle. Now you're stressed out. How do I buy gas for this vehicle? Every minute you have to be praying for provision for this vehicle because it was really outside of you being able to afford it. And so I want to say to us, let us submit our desires or wants to God's sovereign will. To God's sovereign will. To God's sovereign will. I have proven that once it is that you operate in God's sovereign will, come hell or high water, you will always be left smiling. You will always be left with a praise. Joseph said to his brothers, "You meant it for evil, but God has used it for good." A lot of people may pass you over because they are trying to stop you, or they don't want you there, or they don't want to whatever. But hello, somebody, they do not have the final say, and they don't even realize that they are being used by God to fulfill your destiny because you belong to Him and you have submitted your life to Him. This is a long video, but I hope that after you have watched it, that you will be encouraged. Take heart. I know that dealing with God's no can be painful. I've shed many tears because God has said no. I've shed many tears because the answer from God was no. But I am yet to see one situation where God has said no that has worked out that has not worked out in my favor. I'm yet to see it. And I've been through a whole lot. I've been through a whole lot and I'm yet to see it. And so I just want to encourage us that the enemy may mean it for good, for evil, but God will use it for your good because you have submitted your life to Him and you keep praying, "Lord, not my will, but yours be done." That is saying, "God, I want your sovereign will. I want you, God. If it is that you see where this thing is going to cost me my salvation, Lord, don't give it to me. Lord, if you see that being married to this particular person is going to cost me my salvation." It takes a different kind of submission to God to pray those kinds of, it takes a different kind of submission to pray, "Lord, not my will, but thy will be done," because sometimes you really want it. Sometimes you really want what you're praying for. But when you pray at the end, when you put the clause, "Lord, not my will, but your will be done," it takes a different kind of submission. It takes a different kind of love for God. It takes a different kind of trust in God to pray that way. And so I just want to encourage you that, no matter what, no matter what, no matter what, because you belong, I want to say to you, because you belong to God, because you belong to God, because you belong to God, it is what it is and it is well. You are getting that no because you belong to God. You're getting that no because you prayed, because you fasted, because you surrender the situation to God. And He has chosen to say no. It is the best answer and it will work out for your good and for His glory. So may God bless you. May God bless you. May God bless you. May the Lord cause His face to shine upon you. May the Lord be gracious unto you and give you His peace. And give you His peace. God bless you. God bless you. I hope that you're encouraged and I hope that you are blessed by this video. And I hope that you know that when God says no, it's all right. It's all right. You may shed a few tears, yes, a few crocodile tears. You may go around a few months being disappointed and being hurt, but after a while, after a while, you will see why God said no. God bless you.